Hello, everyone. This is your girl, Michelle Jones, of the Girlz Talk, Real Talk podcast. Today on our show, we will be conversating with Olevia Henderson. Olevia is the author of The Dirt I Hid and the creator of Life Through Knowledge nonprofit organization. Listen in as Olevia shares her heart, her passion, and her story of triumph, success, and overcoming. Hey everybody, this is your girl Michelle with Girlz Talk, Real Talk, because when girls talk, just about anything can happen. Well, today, as you can see, I have a very lovely young lady that is on with me, Olevia Henderson. And I have to admit, I met Olevia online, actually on Facebook. I don't know if she asked to be my friend or if I asked to be her friend, but somehow we became friends. Would you introduce yourself to our audience, Olevia?
Hi, and thank you again, Miss Michelle, for having me today. And I actually sent you a friend request.
Okay, I couldn't remember which one.
And everyone, I'm from originally from Shreveport, Louisiana. I've been in Houston for 13 years now. Mother of seven, six living. I lost my youngest in June of 2018, and I'm now the grandmother of eight, five girls, three boys, and I also have five daughters and one son. So currently, I'm in healthcare. I'm an author, motivational speaker, and a life coach, and I'm a certified Christian counselor. Going back to school for the BA because that's my passion to counsel those that have been hurt throughout their lives by different things.
There was one thing that you said in one of your posts that I want you to kind of touch on. You talked about the curse of silence. What did you mean when you said the curse of silence?
What I meant is this. I was raped at the age of 12. When I should have been still playing with my friends, I was being raped in my home. And I tell people this so boldly because when we think of rape, we instantly think uncles, grandmothers, granddads. I was raped by my mother and my brother's dad, forced to have sex with them because he had just gotten out of prison and she allowed him to move into our home. And so, for the love of a man, she would do anything for him, even sacrificing her children, and which was me. And so, when I say the curse of being silenced, when I threatened to tell them, they threatened to do harm to my younger siblings. So that made me stay quiet. So I never told, and I feel even as I got older and was in situations of abusive situations, being beaten by my kid's father, I stay quiet because I was raised that what goes on in this house stays in this house. And I don't know who came up with that saying, but that was the worst curse they could have ever came up with because as I got older and matured, you ever heard the saying your grandmother say, if walls could talk and if I could be a fly on the wall?
Oh yeah.
And later in life, as I got older, I realized if walls could talk, what would they tell us? What kind of hurt is going on in this house? If the fly on the wall and they have all these eyes could tell you what they see, what would they see? So that's why I say the curse of being silenced, because so many people are silenced by their hurt, their past trauma, because they don't want to be judged, or they feel like nobody will believe them, or it's just that someone has made them feel like, oh well, this is just normal, this is what happens. So that's why I say the curse of being silenced.
Well, one of the things that I think that we fail to understand sometimes is that in the Black community, as you said, now I can't speak for any other community because I wasn't raised in that community, but in the Black community, I remember that saying in my house, what goes on in this house stays in this house, and how we were not to go out and share with anybody outside the home what was happening inside of the house. And it created an avenue within me that basically held me hostage. Because what I wasn't telling, I was then being held hostage by that thing. Because if I didn't experience any molestation or rape or anything like that, mine came through not really learning who I was because I had so many expectations put upon you and having to live up to those expectations and not being able to verbalize how that made me feel forced me to become someone I did not know or I did not even realize I didn't want to be. So understanding what you went through, how did that really affect your relationships going forward?
So going forward, I'm gonna fast forward teenage years. I grew up with so much hatred in my heart toward my mother, hatred, and that's a strong word, and never having a relationship with her. So going forward, I seeked to attention that now I realize as I got old, I realized the attention I sought was not the right attention, from dressing provocative, revealing, and at 14, I met my oldest son's father and I told him I was 17, but he was 18. And so that's another thing I tell people. I said the little lies we tell. I say,
Oh
it's
yeah.
so many men in prison right now because some girl lied about her age and he honestly didn't know her age, but because we look older and act older, it's not like they're gonna say, hey, let me see your birth certificate. So
Right.
getting older, and getting involved in that relationship let me open up the door of domestic violence. Now I was already dealing with being beaten, but then I put myself in a situation with a man that he felt that it was okay to beat me. And also it it was so crazy when I think about this. My mother made it okay for them to do it.
Oh.
It was okay. you know um my mother was is an alcoholic. My father is an alcoholic. So, it was no structure. And it was like, hey, if you give her some money, everything is all fine. She has nothing to do with your business. And so, from the age of 14 to 17, I was beaten by my son's father. Even he tried to kill me. So, and when I was finally able to get away from that, yet I found myself with my oldest daughter's dad, because I have 6 baby fathers. So I found myself with my oldest daughter's dad. And then there I am again in a domestic violence situation, and it was to the point where when I did get away from him, I went back to my mother's home and honey, for a 6-pack of beer and some cigarettes, he was in the house dragging me out the house. That was fine because, again, to her, that was not her business. So, the silence just allowed me to just go through so much because I felt that's what I deserved. And I felt that that's what life was for me. And it's crazy because just sitting here thinking I've been in so many situations. My mom took my oldest son from me when I was 16. And the only reason she took him is because he was getting disability. So that was income. So she took him. And then I'm left out and I'm steady having these kids by these men that I just want to be loved. And if you say you love me, we're in a relationship, I'm looking for this love. And then, hey, I got a baby for you, So it was like, but it was coming with so much other stuff. I wasn't really working on me. It's like kind of like a pressure cooker. I tell people it's like you put something in a pressure cooker and you close that lid and it's gonna start cooking, but slowly as the steam build up and the pressure, you start hearing it whistle. And that's how my life was going, in this pressure cooker. I'm steady adding stuff in the pot, not opening the lid. I'm steady adding in the pot. And the pot is getting to the point, it's like it's about to bust.
Right.
So
think about it, and I want you to go back to something that you said, because you had said that you were looking for love in all the wrong places. And one of the things that I normally share when I'm talking about my own life is that the first relationships that we have is those within our family. And that sets the tone for what every other relationship that we enter into, what it's going to look like. And so understanding what you went through in your household and how you went from the abuse that you suffered at the hands of your mom and your dad and then the abuse that you suffered at the hands of the men that you became in relationships with, how did those relationships speak to how you saw yourself or how you envisioned yourself during that time?
They were what I saw my mother have.
Okay.
So, as growing up, I saw my mother in multiple relationships, men in and out our house. I saw my mother married to a lot of different men. I saw my mother being abused by a lot of different men. I wasn't allowed to be around my dad until I was like 13, but the time that my mom and dad was together, they were married. Uh, I remember my dad used to always say he loved me, and he was, he really showed that. And so one day my mom just up, moved, left, gone, dad's gone. So now my mother's never said I love you, never to me, never. And I'm 47, but my dad used to always say that. So I remember like I just wanted the love that my dad used to show me. So I felt that that is what these, each one had something that reminded me of my father, something, not much, but something. And it's like sometimes when you don't know, and like you say, if you don't know who you are, it's like you'll accept anything when you don't know who you are,
Right.
because you're just searching. It's like a crossword puzzle. Your life is like, and my life was literally like a crossword puzzle. Like, is this it? Nah, but I found part of it. So I viewed my life as my mother because that's what I saw. So I'm like, okay, well, if this is what she's doing, then it has to be right because she's doing it. That's, so.
And sometimes that's the way we think. It doesn't mean that it makes sense. But and I was sharing with a friend of mine yesterday when she was talking about how somebody just needs to tell the truth. And my words to her were, but that may be their truth.
Exactly.
And a lot of times we don't realize that the truth does not always line up with my truth. And so in going into the various relationships that you went into, you were living your truth at the time.
At one time, that was my truth.
So when did it become a time that you began to see that that was not valuable in your life anymore?
Probably after my fourth daughter. So after going through so much in relationships and being with their dad, I had two daughters for one guy. And so, it got to the point that I wasn't happy. And I'm like, life has to have more. It has to be more. But yet I still didn't act on what God was showing me. So, I'm still going to go on my choices. And then ended up with my son's father. And we ended up married. And during that time, it's like, all this infidelity was going on and I was accepting that. But at the same time, it's like, you deserve so much better. It's like I was having this conversation with two people and it's like, this is not the life I want. So it spiraled to a head, I'm going to tell you, literally in 2012 when he got up and he took a job out of town in another part of Texas. And his words were, if I wanted my marriage, I would move to where he was. Well, no, because of where he was trying to go, me and the kids had already lived. And so, you told me if I wanted the marriage to work at first, I had to come back here to Houston, so that's what I did. Now you want me to uproot my kids and move because you're moving? No, it's not going to work like that. So I stayed. And so he took the job and he would come home on the weekend. And then one weekend he didn't come. He would send money home. And then all of a sudden he didn't send. It started getting less and less and less till nothing. So at this time, I had a close friend of mine that was like a sister to me. And her daughter was living in our home. And I later found out that he had slept with this young lady in the home while my kids were there. And that was like the straw that broke the camel back. I'm talking about like, I was okay literally, I'm like saying I'm okay with the other affairs, but I was not okay with that. One being, she was my kid's age at the time. So I'm like, are you looking at my kids like, certain kind of way with this young girl? So now you're making me question, like, for you to sleep with this young girl that is my daughter's age, were you like looking at one of my daughters in a certain sexual type of way? But at the same time, I'm looking at the fact, you're bold because you have slept with her in the house while I'm gone and my kids are present. So that was it. So one day I'm like crying, and it's like I got depressed and I wasn't working. I had got so comfortable with not working because he was the provider that it was like solely dependent on him. And this is where I tell people your financial abuse comes in, because when you stop working and you lose your identity because you're dependent on this one individual, now you're putting yourself in a situation that if anything happens, you have no money, you have no resources, everything is in this one person. So I tell people all the time, you have to always identify who you are and have your own also. I don't care what they tell you, oh, you don't have to work. Fine, I'm still choosing to work because tomorrow's not promised and neither are you. You can say you love me all day long, but in the blink of an eye, get up, walk out the door, be gone. So
Right.
that was my reality. So a friend of mine had said something to me. I had gotten overweight. I had gotten up to 300 pounds. And so when she made a comment to me about the weight and how depressed I was, and she basically was like saying I'm living my life in a nursing home. And I'm like, Lord, I don't know what to do. And God said, well, do you see yourself with him another year? And it was just as plain as that. And quickly I said, no. That made me move forward into my divorce. And that, if I tell you, March of 2013 was the day that I felt liberated. Like I walked in that courtroom and got that divorce, and it was like I was holding those divorce papers up like I had obtained a master's degree. You hear me? My friend girl was with me, and I was like, take a picture. And that was my freedom, you know. And then at that point, it was like, what do you want to do with yourself? What are you fit to do with yourself? And so that made me realize, hey, you have these girls looking at you, bills are still coming. What are you gonna do? What do Olevia want to do with herself? So that embarked a whole new adventure of my life, which was Facebook. I started just blogging my life on Facebook, you know, my truths. Like you say, not everybody's truth is your truth, but I start telling my truth. And as I told them, it opened doors. So many people start reaching out to me like, oh my God, this happened to me. Oh my God. And so I realized I was speaking so much life into other people about their situation that, hey, I need to speak the same thing into myself. So that's what started me on that path of motivating other people and, you know, talking to other people. But it was healing for me as well, because I was having to admit my wrongs in my life and the choices I made, you know. And that was like the craziest thing, because I'm telling my kids as they got older, I said, we all have choices in life.
Yes.
And every choice, whether good or bad, has a consequence. So you have to make your choices wisely when you picking them. You know, you can't blame mom, dad, friend, cousin, oh, they made me. No, we have a choice.
We're going to take a break here. This is your girl, Michelle, with Girlz Talk, Real Talk, because when girls and guys talk, information is disseminated. Michelle P. Jones Incorporated presents Grasping Your Success Workshop. This is a small business startup and entrepreneurs workshop on Saturday, April 18th, 2020, from 9:30 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. Registration is $49. Registration includes each participant learning the 6 steps to start and legitimize their business, learning the steps to develop a strategic business action plan, and receiving a signed copy of the Grasping Your Success 6 Steps to Starting and Legitimizing Your Business. Topics to be covered during the workshop are registering your business, certifications, trainings, and licensing, online presence, business insurance, contractual agreement and service agreements, solidify your human resource process, and creating a strategic business action plan. Remember, this is the Grasping Your Success Small Business Startup and Entrepreneurs Workshop on Saturday, April 18th, 2020, from 9:30 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. for only $49. Please purchase your tickets on Eventbrite. This is your girl, Michelle, back from our commercial. I think that's an important part to kind of pause on right there, because we do all have a choice. And as you said, whatever choice we make, whether good or bad, has consequences that are associated with it. And whatever choice we make, we're basically saying that we're big enough and bad enough to handle whatever consequence comes our way as a result.
Yes.
So in one of the things that I thought was really interesting is on one of your posts, you had a scripture highlighted. And it was the scripture that says, Jesus replied, "You do not realize now what I am doing, but later you will understand." Why did you post that scripture?
Because I didn't realize what he was doing in my life. I didn't realize the people he was removing and the people that he was adding. I didn't realize the changes he was making in me. I had all these questions like, why is this? And it was like that scripture popped out. Like, right now you don't understand, you don't know, but you're going to realize it in the long run. And I used to always say, why am I going through all of this? Why not me? I realized the abuse, the beatings, the homelessness, the alcoholicness, all of that. Why not? Somebody is going through it too, but somebody's on the verge that they feel like they cannot make it, and they feel like nobody else has went through what they went through. And then look at me. Here I am, me. I'm you. That's my saying. You look in the mirror and you see you, but I see us. Because I'm us, I'm that person that, okay, I slept with these men. We had these kids for these guys. Okay, we partied, we drank all the time. Okay, you was homeless, I was too. I'm that person, and it's like, I can't judge you, but I can tell you what God can do for you if you allow him into your life. And that was one of the things I didn't allow him in my life because I felt abandoned. It wasn't that I was abandoned. I had shut him out because my focus was not on him. It was on all the other materialistic and earthly things that was going on, but I was not focused on him. And that's our biggest issue sometimes. We lose focus on who God is and what he's able to do because we're looking at what Miss Jones doing over here and what Mimi got going on, and we we're losing the main thing, what God is able to do in our own lives. And so I think that a lot of time, if we just sit back and reevaluate our lives and say, okay, turn it over to God and say, God, now if you lead me, I'm gonna follow. And I had to learn, that scripture, yea, though when we're saying the Lord's Prayer, and you get to that part where they say, yea, though I walk through the valley of death, I will fear no evil. And everybody always just breeze on through that part. But really, if they think about it, they need to stop at that part because he tells us, yes, we're going to go through a valley.
Yes.
But we're not going to stay in the valley. The valley is to teach you things that you would not learn outside. In your darkest hour needs is when you're in that valley. And I found myself in that valley June 5th of 2018. Out of everything in my life, when my son got sick, my son died on June the 5th. He got sick on the 3rd, was put in the hospital that Sunday. That Monday, he was in a coma. That Tuesday, he died. I was in the valley. But at the same time in the valley, I was at a bedside and I was a mother and that's watching their child die. And I heard God say, do you trust me? And I said, yes, because I trust him. I know nothing is done that he doesn't already know what's going to happen. He saw it before it even happened. And that leads me to the healthcare industry. I work in the hospital, and the unit that I worked in was medical ICU. So I saw these patients dying. I've had to do code, CPR, and all of this. And so I say God put me there to prepare me for my son, not knowing that it was going to happen, but I just thought it was the craziest thing that I'm in this medical ICU. But it was one patient, family member, that stood out to me one night, a woman that was crying over her son, whose son passed away like my son. My son died from DKA, diabetic ketosis. He was a diabetic and overweight. And this lady's son was the same, and she was crying, and she wanted us to have him as a full code. She wanted us to do everything we could to keep her son alive. And I remember this woman so plain as day because he was only 23, and she was crying, and she said she was alone. And I asked her, I said, well, can I hug you and pray with you because you're not alone? And she said yes. And me hugging her and praying with her at the bedside of her son and telling her that he's not alone. God is in there with him. He's not alone. And so she said that prayer and me being there helped her decide that she was being, you know, selfish with her. She wanted to keep him. And so, you know, fast forward, he passed away peacefully. But then here I am, man, I think like almost a year later, there go my son. And I'm sitting at this bedside and I'm crying like this woman was. And I had my son full code because I needed them to do everything in their power to keep my child alive. Everything. I don't care. I work in ICU, so I know, you know. But something said, call over to your job because I was next door to my hospital at another hospital.
Mm-hmm.
And I had the nurses talk to my son's nurses because I was real close with my nurses. And I said, could y'all explain to them everything you're doing and tell them? So they did. And so when I got back on the phone, I remember asking my friend, I said, okay, give it to me straight. She said, okay. She said, you know how when we have a cold? I said, yes. She said, you know how we go step to step, the low dosage of meds up to the high dose of meds during the cold? I said, yes. She said, well, your baby's at the highest dose. So if you're at the highest, it's nothing else after this. Nothing. So if he codes, they can't holler, give me epi or bicarb. We can't give that because he's already there. So what do you do when he's already at the max and it's nothing else? Now they can come in here and perform CPR, but they telling me basically that's all they can do because it's nothing they can give. So I had to sit there and stew and cry and pray and ask God what to do. And he asked me, did I trust him? And so then I realized I was being a selfish mama. I was trying to hold on to my child for me because I didn't want to let him go. And he wasn't even mine to begin with. He was just loaned to me.
That's
And God
awesome.
was calling him. God had already came and actually got him. So I decided I didn't want him on full code. I wanted him to, you know, to just comfort care, just keep him comfortable until he passed. And don't you know it? That Tuesday morning when the doctor came in and she said, Mom, I don't want to do any more labs. I already knew nothing else could be done. So when we unplugged all the machines, my baby instantly was gone. Gone. And so I felt overwhelmed, sad, but I didn't feel alone. I didn't feel alone because I knew I had made the right choice and decision not to prolong keeping him on a machine for my selfish reasons. Because as a mother, we always say we'll die for our kids, we'll protect our kids, but
Mm-hmm.
that's not going to bring them back. And it's like me dying and hooping and hollering and keeping him on the machine wasn't going to bring him back. God had already called him home. So I was at this point that I had to believe what God was showing me. So that's why, you know, that scripture always sticks out. Even if you don't know, he knows what he's doing, but you'll eventually see. And I realized that unit that I was put on to work prepared me for my son.
We're going to take a break here. This is your girl, Michelle, with Girlz Talk, Real Talk, because when girls and guys talk, information is disseminated. Have you purchased your copy of the internationally best-selling book, As for Me and My House? This book contains stories strategically designed to help entrepreneurial creatives jump into entrepreneurship. Be sure to pick up your copy today on Amazon.com. I think that that is something that a lot of people need to hear because a lot of times we want to hold on. Because like you said, we can't imagine life without them.
Mm-mm.
And so we hold on for as long as possible that we can possibly hold on. And so when I originally talked to you and asked you to come on to the show for us to have this conversation, there was a scripture that God immediately put into my spirit. Immediately. And I think I put it on the calendar invite that I actually sent you. And I don't know if you read it or not, but it was on there. And it was Genesis chapter 50, verse 20. And it says, but as for you, ye thought it for evil against me, but God meant it unto good,
Good.
to bring to pass as it is this day to save much people alive. So I went and I read it in the New Living Translation because that's really my favorite translation.
Mine too.
And it says, "You intended to harm me, but God intended it all for good. He brought me to this position so I could save the lives of many people."
And you know what that means to me? That meant my organization I started after my son. It's called LTK, Life Through Knowledge. And man, it is so many people aren't aware of things. And it was like, I have to make them aware of things that they don't know, you know, kind of like a contract. You enter, you can put me, you, I'm gonna say a Hispanic, and an Asian, a Caucasian, all of us in the room together, give us all the same contract, right? And they're gonna tell us all the perks and the benefits. Now, all of us are hearing the same conversation. They're telling us the perks, the benefits, and the rewards of signing this contract. African Americans and a lot of Hispanics, we just heard the perks, the bells, the whistles, the rewards, we signed. The Asians, the Caucasians, they're gonna say, how long do I have to get this contract back to you? They're gonna take that contract home. They're gonna read it with a magnifying glass, word by word. Things they don't understand, they're gonna underline. Things they got questions about, they're gonna circle. They're gonna put little arrows, all kind of, and they're gonna bring it back and they're gonna say, well, what do you mean by this? Explain this part. You know the little fine print we don't know. That's why Life Through Knowledge came about, to bring awareness to diabetes and obesity in our kids. Because when we take our kids to the doctor, we just, all they tell us is they have they're either diabetes 1, diabetes 2, or, you know, mom, you need to get them on some kind of diet, some kind of exercise regimen. That's it. They don't go into deep detail, nothing with us, because we're just okay with accepting the little plain little script and walking out the door. Whereas other people are going to ask all these questions. Well, what are my options? What do you suggest? What do you recommend? Not us. We take the script, go to the doctor. We got some metformin, 500 milligram, or we got insulin shots we giving. That's it. Our knowledge is like, we lack that knowledge. So we have to start being more knowledgeable to the things and not accepting things so easily. You know, before it was medicine, what did everybody do? I'm not saying don't take your meds, but I'm saying it's other options than to just say, okay, well, they say I got diabetes, my baby got diabetes, he's just going. What other options do you have? We have to start educating ourselves and bringing that type of awareness. Like the time that we spend buying these $60-something video games for our kids to go spend 4, 5, 6 hours in a room, and then we complaining about they don't come out the room. We listen. They don't come out the room because we bought the $60-something video game. We complain about they're overweight. They don't have the access to the money. We told them to order something through Uber Eats, or we picked up what do you want to eat on the way. We stopped and picked up the food and brought it home. So, you know, we have to be mindful of our part that we play in our children's health and why they don't go outside like we used to and play. Oh, it's hot out there. It was hot when we went outside, but we went, we ran, we played. You know, it's things like that. You have to start. We have to get our kids back to the way. I'm not gonna say the way we was raised, but I'm gonna say from the standpoint of being outside and, you know, running around and moving and the choices. We didn't have choices of what we got to eat growing up.
Right.
You know, it's like this is what it got. This what you got. This what it is, and it's what you gonna eat. We didn't have us. Well, I want McDonald's, or you know, we didn't have the why our kids are allowed so many options these days. It's like they take over. It's on them. Their choices. So it tests you. What role are you playing? Are you the parent or are you the child? So that's the Life Through Knowledge.
Now that is interesting that you put it like that, because you asked the question, are you the adult or are you the child? When we allow them to make decisions that they are ill-equipped to make with the necessary information. In one of the other things that I wrote down, you wrote a book, but before we get to the book, I noticed that you have a lot of posts on Facebook where you talk about Herbalife shakes.
Oh yeah, that was my thing, honey. That helped me get all that 100. Yeah, I lost 112 pounds with that.
Well,
Now
bless you.
I don't just give it to anybody. I tell them you have to do what works for you. Because everybody can't do what I do. I just tell when people say, "Well, what are you doing?" I just put it out there so they'll know what I did. You know, uh, some people sell it. They're selling it. They make a career out of it. My thing is, I'm just telling you what helped me with my journey of weight loss. Some people are doing keto. Some just do regular meals. But I tell people whatever works for you. You can't just now. I tell them, don't think you're gonna drink a shake and go to sleep and wake up little. That don't work. That don't work. Just like just eating healthy and going to sleep, the weight you might lose maybe 5 pounds, but it rolls like a wheel. Eat healthy, work out. All of it has to come together, hand in hand. You can't do one without the other.
So what got you on that journey? What happened? What was the mind change? Because any change that we do in our lives first start with the changing of a mindset. So what was the trigger that said, okay, I'm gonna have to lose this weight because I need, or I'm looking for, or whatever the case may be? What was that trigger?
One of my daughters that also had ADHD, but she was off the chain, disrespectful, and we were fighting. Like I had to fight her like a grown person because she wants to fight. And so in this fight, honey, it was like I felt like I was fighting a grown woman because she was swinging, fight like we fighting. And I had all this weight on me. And when it was all said and done, I was breathing so hard, I was out of breath. I was like, oh, I don't know if she thought she was going to whoop me because I was big. I just don't know. I think she thought she could take me for a minute because she looked at the fact mama big. Nah, mama might be big, but you ain't gonna be whooping up on me. So, and that was an eye opener too. Like, honey, your kid just done raised up in your house like she finna whoop you, and you out of breath now, you tired. You gonna have to shake back. You got to get this weight off you. My knees hurting, they popping all out of place when I'm walking. I'm like, So that in itself, I realized how unhealthy I was. Like walking up a flight of stairs in my house, when I get to the top, you would have thought somebody chased me. I'm breathing so hard. I'm like, I got to catch my breath just from one flight of stairs. That was like unacceptable. Like I didn't want to live like that. I didn't want my kids to have to take care of their mother for being overweight because of the choices I was making, just laying in the bed eating, just eating. That's not their job. My job was to take care of them, not them take care of me. So that is what made me get up and do something.
So what made you choose that journey? Like you said, there's so many journeys that you could have taken.
A friend of mine in Shreveport, she was on it, and she said I ought to try it, and so I did, and I liked it because it was quick, it was easy, and working 12-hour shifts. Sometimes you can't cook all the time, so it was easy for me to do my 2 shakes, and then like have my meal. It was easier than having to cook all the time. It was so much easier because when you're in a hospital setting or nursing home setting or whatever long-term health care, you might not get a break. You might have just enough time to drink something. So if I got this protein shake, I mix up, shake up, and drink it. I'm going back. That was like my biggest help because when she said just try it, if you don't like it, you don't have to do it. It was the option. If you don't like it, you don't have to do it. And which I talk about. I've done a lot of journeys, like the Herbalife I stuck with. I did hydroxycut, I did the Xenical, I did the Adipex, I did when Louisiana was called quick weight loss, I did metabolic weight loss. I'm talking about like I'm the poster child for I attempted keto, but because I don't eat beef, it was hard for me to do keto. And so I just couldn't get with the keto. Now I'm not saying it don't work because I see people looking fabulous with it. It doesn't work for me because I can't do all of the, what they got going on with keto. Herbalife is easier for me because it's like I'm more in tune to, hey, I get up, have my shake, have my snack, I can eat my dinner as a lunch, or I can eat my dinner at dinner. But either way it go, I done drunk these 2 shakes today and had some tea and I'm good and I'm gone about my business. That works for me.
Okay. So I'm curious of a couple of things. because you are very candid about the life that you have lived up to this point. And you are very open and transparent about the journey that it has taken you to get to where you are. Where did that come from? Where did the tenacity now to be so transparent and be so adamant about getting that life story out there? I know you talked about your son and the diabetes and the foundation, but I'm talking about your own personal life and the journey you went through.
I met a lady here in Houston that had an organization called Survivors with Voices. And I started going to this organization, and meetings. And so, I shared my testimony with her as what I went through. And as I kept going, later, she asked me to become her chapter president for her organization, in which I did. And so many other women started coming to the meetings, and, where they were helping, they were sharing, they were, it was like things that, like, again, no one thought anybody else had went through. So when I met her, she gave me 3 things to do that I will never forget, that helped me start my journey. She asked me to write a letter to my mother, write a letter to my stepfather, and to write a letter to that 12-year-old little girl that was abused. And so in doing so, now I mailed the letter to my mother, didn't put a return address. I don't know where stepfather is, but I wrote it all in the same as if I was going to mail it. And I also wrote myself, which was the 12-year-old girl, a letter to let her know that she had no wrong. She had done nothing wrong. You were a child. So when this woman helped me realize that I couldn't keep holding on to this hate that I had to walk into my freedom. And in order to be free, I had to walk into my boldness and being transparent. I can't tell you a little bit of something about me because I don't want you to think a certain way. I have to be completely honest with me. And so, getting into that organization and meeting women and sharing my life in itself and just being open, that is what got me to this point. And then an instance where I remarried a few years ago. I thought this was my forever husband, honey. And turned out here I am, all these years later, I'm a victim of domestic violence again. And I'm like, how did I get to this point? Now, the key part to this is I lost a good friend in the midst of this because she felt that I should have just walked away from my marriage instantly. But I looked at it as, I think all things can be worked out. I didn't want to walk away without saying I did not try. So in doing so, I went and enlightened. We started going to counseling with the pastor, and the first lady. I took every avenue possible to help my marriage. But at the end, I realized that was not safe for me nor my kids. But to lose a friend because one feel the minute something happened, they've been with you through the storm all the other times, and they felt like you're just supposed to up and leave, and then now you lose a friend. But I'm like, well, you never were a friend if you just got up so quickly and left because I didn't do something you wanted me to do. So now just being blunt and just open, is it helps a lot of people, believe it or not, because they're always in my inbox, and so I'm like, and sometimes I tell them it's okay to just cry. If you just want to call me, text me in the middle of the night, I won't judge. I won't judge. And I've had people do that. I'm at work and people are, saying, hey, I need to talk. And I'm like, well, give me 5 minutes and I'm going to give you my cell phone number and I'm available because I know what it's like to want to talk to somebody in the middle of the night and you don't want to talk to a family member. You don't want to talk to your friend. This is somebody that you see and you're like, they're not going to judge me because they don't know me. I can't judge you.
Thank you for listening in on part 1 of our conversation with Olevia Henderson. Be sure to tune in next week for the conclusion of the conversation. This is your girl, Michelle, signing off and reminding you to always remember you are braver than you believe stronger than you seem, smarter than you think, and more beautiful than you could ever imagine.